It was raining again in New Calliope. It usually did. Nothing new. What had been new for the last 2 weeks was the beast. The beast sat alone even in the rain. It had a shelter nearby, but it did not often return to the shelter. It sat outside of it until overwhelmed by hunger or weariness. Then it returned grudgingly before lifting itself up for another day of vigil. New Calliope was an always changing yet never changing enigma. A den of scavengers like those found in the backwater regions of any industrial sector. An inhabited pile of ramshackle huts and containers where the unwanted things and unwanted beings ended up, almost by an inevitable inertia, some subtle calculus of reality. The warmth of the beast's well-built and insulated shelter, the cozy and gentle red-shifted light during the night, the food synthesizer that crafted the beast's fresh meals 3 times a day. All of these would all have been snatched almost instantly as highly valuable loot by 100 devious hands within their first day of being, had they been left unattended by almost anyone. They had remained untouched for 2 very important reasons. First, the beast was a lean and muscular quadrupedal pack predator with shining ivory fangs. This unnerving fact, in and of itself, dissuaded most ne'er-do-wells. In fact, it was surprising that the local gangs tolerated such an immediate threat. The being was live and agile, chewing through bones recreationally. It was worth any 2 elite enforcers. But the gangs never came down this lane, let alone anywhere close to the beast's fence. Why the gangs never ventured near happened to be for the second reason the valuable belongings of the dwelling remained untouched, even by the most reckless sort. This beast was the companion of a human, and even the wildest of the scraps in New Calliope were usually not quite that crazy. I took my midday meal, watching the beast from the kitchen window of my second-floor apartment across the lane, as I had done for the past 11 cycles. I maintained no delusions of stealth or subterfuge. It knew I was here. I had tried to observe it surreptitiously only once before, being immediately spotted by its unimpressed gaze. We had occasionally made eye contact in the days since. It had appraised me with the disinterested glance of a stranger on the public transit shuttle. It was aware I was here observing it, and seemed equally aware I was not a threat. I was not who it was waiting for, so it spared me no further thought. Given my herbivorous and pacifist nature as an Alderian, the beast's instincts were correct about my lack of threat potential. I watched simply because the subtle and smooth coordination of the beast's body and instincts were expressive, and also oddly mesmerizing even in mundane activities. It seemed to waste little motion, but approached life with the focus of a Menton navigator. The beast was, for something so foreign and terrifying, quite admirable. In this dangerous place, on balance, I was glad to have it on my lane. I had talked with a human before he left, who went by the human moniker Paul, and knew that he was supposed to be back 4 cycles ago. We did not communicate often or at length, but he was a courteous neighbour. I suppose he thought me the same. I had often observed his play with the beast. Like the beast, he was aware of my observation, and did not seem remotely threatened by it. Sometimes he would raise his appendage and wiggle the extremities, which I had come to learn was usually a human greeting sign, not the distress signal it was for most species. Confusingly, it was sometimes a distress signal. My neighbour had explained that context and body language, with the difference, were obvious to humans. This fascinated me, but I nodded politely rather than ask more. Humans were dangerous, no matter how friendly. I did not understand the human nor his companion, but some part of me ached to see them separated for 4 cycles long too long, stretching to 5. I meditated on my emotional state and returned with no answers. Most curious. It had been another 2 cycles, mostly rainy with a little sunshine. The beast came out to lie in one of the rare sunbeams in this smoggy city, and I found myself twitching my cranial stalks in amusement in spite of myself. The beast was also pleasant to watch when it relaxed. Perhaps I was simply gratified that it was granted some respite from the waiting. The longer Paul took, the more I wondered how long the beast would wait for his reunion. The fear that no reunion might happen was something my mental processes studiously avoided. Unfortunately, it did not appear that the beast and I were the only ones who had been waiting. As I took another midday meal, my body trembled slightly with alarm as I observed the slow and confident sauntering of a mixed-species group as it ambled down the lane. All 4 beings in the group were clad in apparel of eye-straining yellow. The Skrindax, one of the smaller but more ambitious and aggressive gangs in this part of New Calliope. Like the others' gangs, this lane had been given a wide berth by them. But apparently one of them had noticed the human had been gone far longer than usual. I drew my shades tight but continued to peek. I recognized him as Calliope, one of the largest and nastiest gang thugs to frequent the central marketplace of our living block. I had once watched him savagely beat an elderly woman buying foodstuffs for not allowing him to sample her wares. Security at the market had been wise enough to look elsewhere, as they often did. I felt a sense of deep foreboding. Calliope was not one to travel idly. The beast, who seemed to have been prepared for the arrival of the malcontents for far longer than me, was statuesque. His body was rigid, and his hair stiffened. In spite of my dread, as the situation unfolded, I once again marveled at the poetry of the beast's body language. This was a munition primed for the launch, a nature-crafted killer, perfectly evolved to slay. There were few worlds in the galaxy that could produce such life, and none produced life as deadly as the human Kresh world. As the group came to a stop in front of the human's fenced yard, the beast made a noise I had never heard from it, a sound like the air itself tearing, punctuated by a series of staccato sonic bursts as it flashed its fangs. 3 of the Skrindax scampered away from the fence, paling. Even Calliope noticeably flinched. For a moment the interaction was frozen until the ringleader sneered, an ugly expression on an uglier face, and removed a metal bundle from his waist. He pressed a button and the bundle snapped into a full-length baton with a crackling end. My heart sank. A grell prod. A particularly nasty and painful shock inducer that could cause neural damage if used at length. They were a well-known and quite illegal instrument of gang intimidation. Calliope had come prepared. Without hesitation, he roughly jammed the baton through the holes in the fence and contacted the mouth of the beast. It flinched back and emitted a startled yelp that made my body lurch. His growl was interrupted, and he shook his head before renewing his frenzied barks. Calliope snapped to the other Skrindax to start forcing the fence open while he kept the beast at bay. He meant to make his place for Paul's belongings, beast or no beast. I am a peaceful creature, as most of my species are. The Aldarian people are observers and mediators. I suppose this is why it took me so long to realize the feeling welling up in me. I was angry. Most curious. The anger built to something like rage. Not only curious, but startling. Emotions this powerful are rare in Aldarians, having been unnecessary for the recent ages of our evolution. I began an expedited meditation to determine the root cause, and if it was as simple as it had seemed. The creature was loyal to Paul, and it hurt me to see a loyal companion harmed for no cause. It was an injustice. Through even the dispassionate eyes of a mediator, the scales were unbalanced. That was not sufficient explanation. Injustice was not a novel happening in New Calliope. It should not have bothered me so. But it did. Just then, I remembered a conversation I had with Paul, a few mid-cycles previous. We had been standing near my fence, discussing the weather patterns in the city of late. I had said something, I'm still not sure what, that made him emit the curious, slightly insane-sounding human laugh. Slightly inebriated on the alcohol-containing beverage he was imbibing, an insanity in and of itself that would have peeled my insides like a nella fruit, he had said, "You're an alright dude to have ended up in a rough neighborhood. Hang on a sec." Before stumbling inside his dwelling. When he returned, he had handed me a small plastic rectangle with a single physical button in the center. He told me it was a repurposed garage opener, but waved away my question when I asked him what a garage was. He had said, "Nah, forget that, buddy, forget that. If things ever look really bad, hit this. Trust me, it'll be okay." I had asked what the button would do, and asked why things might get bad. He had not answered either question, but stumbled back inside to sleep off the toxic effects of his beverage. I had handled the button gingerly, like an explosive, and stored it safely. I now removed the button from my safekeeping box and I pressed it. Nothing happened. I looked outside anxiously. Nothing was different. The Skrindax were beginning to work the fence open, the beast snarling but warily eyeing the grill prod and keeping his distance. I pressed it a few more times, frantically and hopefully. Nothing happened. The situation grew more dire. I then reached a decision that was not logically sound, and it terrified me. I could not permit the beast to be harmed while I stood by and did not assist. The button had failed. I must now be the button. I seized the only item that had use as a weapon in my home, a large wooden cylinder the human had gifted me for an annual holiday called Thanksgiving, that had been of quite excellent use in creating uniform dough when I cooked gin leaf pastries, of which all my neighbours had a fondness that eventually evolved into my small bakery. I exited my house, heading down the back stairs, and felt my heart's thunder. Aldarians were not a combat species, not for centuries, and even then not much. My logic and actions were not sound or moderate. Yet I plodded onwards, to my own confused terror, until I rounded the corner and was face to face with the Skrindax. At the first sight of me, the three lackeys laughed immediately. Kalar merely sneered. One of the lackeys, who favoured a large spiked club and, based on his odour and drippings, was a Nulab, wetly laughed and said, "Hey, look, boys, the baker wants to play too." Kalar coolly responded, "Perhaps he will enjoy the grill pod as much as this scavenger." Attempting to keep my voice even, despairing at the shaking I heard, I said, "You may not harm this animal. Are you mad? He is the companion of a human." I was desperately attempting to prevail upon their self-interest. However, they had evidently convinced themselves this was no longer a problem, as even the timid lackey who had flinched the most from the dog's growl confidently said, "We have the transport logs. The human was due back 6 cycles ago. That transport is dead in space, and we claim this property as abandoned. Leave, before we claim yours too." I stepped forward, nearly fainting. "This animal is under my protection as well." There was a moment of silent disbelief before a newly uproarious laugh erupted from the group. Kalar spoke, still cold and affecting an amusement that was clearly false. "Oh, that's really good. But really, Silja, get gone before we decide some limp Aldarian branch is worth our attention." He turned back to the fence to provoke the beast again. I wondered what I was going to do next before watching my own limbs in disbelief as I raced forward and slammed the rolling pin into the back of the Nulap's head. He dropped like a sack of tubers. The remaining 3 turned to me, and none of them were laughing now. "Really big mistake. I'm glad you made it," Kalar hissed, before removing the grill prop from the fence and driving it into my abdomen. The pain was indescribable. I fell to the ground and clawed at the dirt, attempting frantically to get away, to do anything to stop this pain. Kalar stepped casually over me. "Imagine throwing your life away for a scavenger beast. Who will throw theirs away for you, Baker?" The prod was driven into my forehead with renewed force, and new horizons of pain opened to me. The cuts and bruises were secondary to the horrible burning agony of the prod. I screamed, but the noise echoed off closed doors and drawn curtains. The neighbourhood had learned his lesson from my intervention. There would be no one to help me. Interestingly, in my pain I noticed what the 3 remaining Skrindax had not. The beast's staccato noises had stopped. Looking past Kalar's scarred and leering visage, I saw that it had managed to nearly squeeze itself through the gap the lackeys had been opening in the fence. In spite of my agony, a shaky smile appeared on my face. Kalar's leer transformed from sadistic to confused, before a spark of realization and a quick turn. But it was too late. The beast was among them. It was a virtuoso's display of carnage. The beast was a dervish. His first bite took Kalar's hand off in a single tug, the grill prod along with it. I marvelled at the beast's strategic cunning, taking away the tool that had hurt him and defending me at once at his first move. As the ringleader howled at his oozing stump, the other 2 lackeys attempted to bludgeon the beast with their clubs. They might as well have tried to empty the ocean with a thimble, so effortlessly were they mauled. Kala had been the only real threat, and the beast snarled with the full-throated confidence of an apex predator. Even with him defending me, I felt a chill. As the Skrindax writhed and wailed in puddles of their effluvia on the ground, the beast trotted over to me, matted with a mixture of blood, but otherwise appearing as cheerful as he normally did. He used his snout to check over my body and whimpered slightly. I knew from my past conversations with Paul that his smell was incredibly acute, and my body agreed with his assessment that I was harmed rather badly. Still, I was warmed by his care. My heart sank when, past the concerned gaze of the beast, I saw at least a dozen more Skrindax coming. So they had been smart enough to bring backup, and some of them had ranged weapons. The beast wheeled as they neared, dropping himself down to his haunches and snarling, creating a truly terrifying image as he dripped with the blood of their compatriots. I noticed 3 of them peel off down side alleys. Smart. But I knew the ones who remained would be enough to doom us. I reached my hand out and petted the beast's plush fur. Even agitated, it glanced at me and wagged its tail. I smiled. There were worse endings than this, even for a baker. I flinched involuntarily as the air in New Calliope exploded. In mere seconds, all of the Skrindax were messily dead. I gaped, not comprehending. Sorry it took us a minute. I glanced behind me, amazed. 3 humans stood, somehow even more chilling than the snarling beast. I had heard the legends of humanity's battle prowess, and as they stood there, war-kitted and alert, they seemed practically a different species from the relaxed, alcohol-guzzling Paul I had come to know. All were live, tattooed, and cradling sinister weapons that looked like they could bring down starships in low orbit. So, Paul gave you a button, huh? I could only nod. That's rare, especially for Paul. Well, I'm Eliza. This is Mitch. That's Kumail. You okay? Is Paul's dog okay? I am Seldoni. I think we may both need care, I said honestly. Oh, shit. Right there across the street, Seldoni's. Paul brought your croissant things to us. You're a good-ass baker. No problem. Kumail is a field medic. He'll stay with you until services get here. Hey, Kumail, it's the croissants Paul brought. This is the guy. I looked over to see Kumail unpacking a dazzlingly complicated field medical kit, complete with a small drone, all in white with a red cross, flitting around me and scanning my wounds. I recognized the Red Cross from the galaxy-famous human relief efforts and felt comforted. Kumail smirked. They're not croissants, they're gin leaf calients. But yeah, this guy makes the best ones I've had. Well, excuse the fuck out of me, they were croissant-ish. I stared at Kumail, surprised. You know Aldarian foods? He nodded and smiled. I did 2 years with Alliance Medical Outreach on Aldar too. Y'all can cook. Still dazed, I could say only, my sister lives in Aldar too, but she is troublesome. Kumail laughed and nodded, unbothered by my inappropriate sharing. I looked up to see that Eliza and Mitch had begun walking away. Both had unpacked their own bags and were now circled by much heavier, less pleasant-looking drones than Kumail's medical drone. What are those? What are you doing? Aren't you worried the Skrindax will mark you? We must get to shelter. Eliza glanced back at me, her expression grim. The Skrindax have had 2 warnings. This was the 3rd strike. Every human in this city knows what's going on now. In 2 cycles, the Skrindax won't exist anymore, and the other gangs will get their periodic reminder about why they don't fuck with humans. She smiled at me for a moment, some sun through the shadow. Or with anyone we like. Then the sun was gone. Eliza and Mitch moved in quiet, stalking coordination with one another, until they crested the hill and were out of sight. My heart sank for what the Skrindax had awakened. I hoped the lesson to the other gangs would be a lasting one this time. As he patched my wounds, Kumail noticed I was petting the beast still. You know, most non-humans don't like dogs. They're pretty scary to y'all. You like paws? Yes, I said, unfamiliar emotions making it difficult to speak. He is loyal. Kumail was silent for a moment, contemplating, a curious expression crossing his face, before he smiled and patted my abdomen reassuringly. Well, don't worry, Paul is on his way back. He just made a stop to help some friends on Promo Free. I'll give you a copy of his gate code so you can check on his pup if you don't mind. His name is Muffins, by the way. Muffins? The human pastry? Long story. I do not mind checking on Muffins. I am, after all, a baker. But you would trust a non-human with security codes? Well, not usually, Kamel grinned. But I don't think Muffins is the only one who's loyal. Epilogue. Paul is gone on his unspecified business again, but I don't mind. Muffins, not a beast at all, likes to snuggle. And turns out I do too. I'm always sad when Paul gets home because I don't sleep as well without Muffins. I think Muffins is sad too, as his large, expressive eyes are skilled at prying pastries from my soft hearts. The gangs don't even come near this block anymore, let alone our lane. My bakery business has exploded. Humans from all over New Calliope come to eat here. There were more than I'd have thought. It's raining again on New Calliope, but all is well.